should deal with that, and it's in you and me too. You see, Habakkuk says, God, why do you tolerate wrongdoing? And God says, Habakkuk, that's what I've been doing with you for the last 600 years. See, God promises judgment. But between now and judgment, he gives grace. God intentionally and irrationally offers grace. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I just know he does it. And the same God who let the Israelites and the Jewish people of that day live in their own sin for decades is the same God who is allowing the Babylonians to live in their sin for this moment. Let's keep going. The second half of verse 13. Habakkuk says, God, why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? Why are you silent while the wicked swallow up those more righteous than themselves? Habakkuk is like, listen, God, okay, so I know we're not perfect, but we're better than the Babylonians. I mean, seriously, God, we are better than the Babylonians. When I was in college, one semester I had to take a physics class. And in that physics class, my professor was a brilliant teacher in the sense of presenting something, putting it on the screen, and explaining it to us in a way that you could totally understand what he was doing. Every problem he did in class made perfect sense to me. And I was like, I get it. I understand it. I know exactly what this is all about. And then the tests would come. And on his tests, he would always throw in 2 or 3 extra things that he'd never covered in class. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so you just fumble through it until finally you have to turn it in because the time is up. On my final exam for my physics class that year, I got a 40%. And that was an A. There was a dude in the class who got a 99. Loser kid. I don't know what his problem was, but he should be judged. But anyway, so luckily they drop off the high score, and the professor graded everything on a curve. You know why? Because then I could say, I got a 40%. Forget the 40%. I could say, I'm better than all those other guys who got the 30s and the 20s. See, this is the way we like to operate. We go to God and we're like, God, I know I'm only 40%, but he's 30. I mean, easily. He's 30, maybe 20. God, you have to judge him first. It's like the person who's driving down the road and then they want the cop to pull over the faster speeder as opposed to me, even though I was totally speeding. This is our problem. Habakkuk's saying the same thing. He's like, God, why would you bring the Babylonians in? Because we're not as bad as all that. This is Habakkuk's problem. It's your problem and it's my problem. God's standard has nothing to do with a curve. God does not grade on a curve. God's standard is perfection. So you look at this situation, and so far the 3 things that Habakkuk has complained about, God could easily just say, nope, got that one wrong. So last week, Habakkuk's complaint was honest. I mean, he was kind of a little bit upset with the stuff in his day, and he brought it to God. But this week, his complaint has no merit. This week, his complaint is just empty. He's complaining about things that are true in his heart, but once you analyze them, once you think about them, they're just absolutely not good. But that doesn't stop him. Look at the way he takes the next section. He tells this little parable to God as if God needs an illustration for why Habakkuk is upset. I'll just read through it. And he says, God, you've made people like the fish in the sea, like the sea creatures that have no ruler. The wicked foe pulls all of them up with hooks. He catches them in his net. He gathers them up in his dragnet, and so he rejoices and is glad. Therefore he sacrifices to his net and burns incense to his dragnet. For by his net he lives in luxury and enjoys the choicest food. Habakkuk is saying, God, these bad people, they even worship their bad things. And then he says, is this bad person to keep on emptying his net, destroying nations without mercy? Well, is he God? Read the rest. I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. You just picture this petulant little boy just absolutely upset at his mom and dad, slamming the door or standing there next to it saying, I will not do whatever it is I'm supposed to do, because you haven't solved my problem yet. Now, I don't know, maybe Habakkuk was actually a soldier. Maybe he was actually stationed on that wall to, watch. But he says, I'm going to stand on my watch. I'm going to stand there until, God, you do something. And God answers. God answers, and his answer comes in 3 sections, 3 ideas. We'll go through them relatively quickly. Verse 2. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end, and it will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay. Write this down. God's first response to Habakkuk is, wait. My plan might linger, but it will come. My plan might linger, but it will come. This is the same thing he told Habakkuk last week. He was like, listen, just calm yourself down and wait. I'm doing something here that needs a little tweaking. Just hang on. That's basically, it's my paraphrase. Verse 4, see, he says, the enemy is puffed up. His desires are not upright, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. Indeed, wine betrays him. And here he goes back to talking about the bad guy. He's arrogant and never at rest, because he is as greedy as the grave, and like death he is never satisfied. He gathers to himself all the nations and takes captive of all the peoples. God's second big point to Habakkuk is that he is fully aware of all the stuff the bad people are doing. He is fully aware. By the way, if he's fully aware of what the bad people are doing, he's fully aware of what everyone is doing. He's fully aware of everything you and I are doing. God is fully aware of what people are doing. So Habakkuk is like, God, are you not paying attention? God's like, no, I'm paying attention. I got it. Let's keep moving, because now what God does to respond, he says in verse 6, will not all of them taunt him with ridicule and scorn? Just pause there for one more second. The ancient world, when they did a taunt, when they used that word taunt, what they meant by that is that someone has just been defeated or is on the edge of defeat, and you're standing outside laughing at them. This is the example of The Simpsons, when Bart crashes on his skateboard and a little boy standing next to him goes, ha ha! That's a taunt. That's what God is talking about. And he's like, this is the taunt that is going to go up against the bad people, against the Babylonians. In other words, God is saying they're going to get theirs. They're going to get theirs in due time. But let's go ahead and see what he says about it. Woe to him who piles up stolen goods and makes himself wealthy by extortion. How long must this go on? Will not your creditors suddenly arise? Will they not wake up and make you tremble? Then you will become their prey, because you've plundered many nations. The peoples who are left will plunder you, for you have shed human blood. You have destroyed lands and cities, and everyone in them. The first taunt against these bad people is that these bad people have plundered others, but now they're going to get plundered. Keep going. God says next, woe to him who builds his house by unjust gain, setting his nest on high to escape the clutches of ruin. You have plotted the ruin of many peoples, shaming your own house and forfeiting your life. The stones of the walls will cry out, and the beams of the woodwork will echo it. Keep going. Woe to him who builds a city with bloodshed and establishes a town by injustice. Has not the Lord Almighty determined that the people's labor is only fuel for the fire, that the nations exhaust themselves for nothing? Read that again. The people's labor is only fuel for the fire. What he's saying is that these Babylonians, you've worked really hard to build a city, but guess what? It's going to burn. You've plundered others, now you're going to be plundered. You've built a city, but it's going to burn. And then there's this line. It's almost as if God is stepping back from the taunt just to declare something that is true. And then he's going to get back into the taunt. But this line is interesting. Verse 14, he says, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. God is saying that in the midst of this taunt, behind the scenes, God's glory is going to rise and strengthen and fill the earth. Let's get back to the taunt. It's kind of fun. So then we go to verse 15. Woe to him who gives drink to his neighbors, pouring it from the wineskin till they're drunk, so that he can gaze on their naked bodies. You will be filled with shame instead of glory. Now it's your turn. Drink and let your nakedness be exposed. The cup from the Lord's right hand is coming around to you, and disgrace will cover your glory. The violence you've done to Lebanon will overwhelm you, and your destruction of animals will terrify you. For you have shed in human blood. You've destroyed lands and cities and everyone in them. And here God says, okay, so you humiliated other people. You got them drunk and you just watched them to try to see how bad things would get. You humiliated other people. I'm going to humiliate you. See, everything that the bad people do, God sees, He knows, and He has a plan to deal with it. Let's look at the rest of this. Of what value is an idol carved by a craftsman, or an image that teaches lies? For the one who makes it trusts in his own creation. He makes idols that cannot speak. Woe to him who says to wood, come to life, or to lifeless stone, wake up. Can it give guidance? It's covered with gold and silver, but there's no breath in it. This last week, I watched that old cartoon, Pinocchio. You know, Geppetto, he carves the little boy, and then he's like, oh, I wish you were a real boy. And then the blue fairy comes in, and she goes, be a real boy, or whatever it is she says. And you get this impression that, oh, wouldn't that be wonderful if, the thing that you made could come to life? No, it's ludicrous. It only happens in Disney. But we've been doing that for like a long, long time as humans. We take something that is inanimate, stupid, cannot do anything for us. And we say, oh, wow, what can I do for you? The Babylonians did it. We still do it today. Serving the thing. It's just so ludicrous and outlandish that we would put our hope in something that we've made ourselves. Or even worse, that someone else has made. Write this down. God says to Habakkuk that glorious judgment will come. God says to Habakkuk that glorious judgment is coming. And I want to show you this one last verse of God's response. Verse 20. It says, the Lord is in his holy temple. Let all the earth be silent before him. It's a powerful line. You get these people who are begging the stones to talk, begging the wood to talk. You get these people who are humiliating others and trying to get them so they can laugh at them and be entertained by them. You get these people who are building cities based on unjust gain, and they are thieving and stealing from other people. They're doing violence. And then on top of that, you have Habakkuk himself, who is whining and complaining about these inconsistencies that God apparently is doing, even though he has previously told them that's exactly what he's going to be doing. And you got all this cacophony of all these people making noises. And then it says God is in his temple. Let the earth be silent. Just shut your mouth. I've got this. I'm in charge, he says. I'm on the throne. I'm still in charge. I know everything that's happening. I have a plan and a strategy for everything that's going on. So sit down and be quiet. You see, there is a painful truth in this story with just a ray of hope in the midst of it. But the painful truth is that as I look at this story, I realize I am far too much like Habakkuk. I mean a lot. I find all the ways that God has made some promise to me and that he hasn't come through making his promise to me in my timing. And I look at all the people around me and the problems that they have and the things that I can't tolerate about all those people. And I just want God to do something about all the things that I'm intolerant of. And I want him to be tolerant of all the things that I'm tolerant of. And he doesn't seem to be working on my time scale against my things, the things that are important to me. And so I find myself in the complaining seat far too often, just like Habakkuk. And even though my complaining is as irrational and idiotic as Habakkuk's, I still do it. And if I'm in the place of Habakkuk, do you know what that means? That means God should judge me. God was preparing to judge Habakkuk and his people. And that means God should judge me. But he hasn't yet. There's a ray of hope in the midst of this Habakkuk passage that I skipped over earlier because it was just so small. It's this tiny little phrase, all the way back in verse 4. It's this phrase, God is talking about the evil Babylonians and what's going to happen to them. And in the midst of that, there's this tiny little phrase where he stops talking about the Babylonians and he says something about his people. And then he goes back and he talks about the evil people again. But there's this tiny little phrase in verse 4 of chapter 2. Let me read it to you. It says this, but the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. The righteous person will live by his faithfulness. This weird little statement in the midst of this woe, in the midst of this taunt, the righteous person will live by his faithfulness. That little phrase is quoted in the New Testament 3 times. The Apostle Paul quotes it once in Romans, once in Galatians, and it gets quoted in Hebrews as well. This tiny little phrase, back when Habakkuk heard it, back when God spoke it to Habakkuk, you know what it meant to Habakkuk back then? It meant, listen, dude, I'm in charge. Calm down. Just have faith. Just trust me. If you're righteous, then you're going to live by faith. If you're going to follow me, if you're going to do the right thing, then you have to just have faith in me. Just rely on me. Just trust that it's going to work out, that I'm going to make everything right. Righteous people live through faith and the kind of faith that makes a difference, faithfulness. But when Paul got it in the New Testament, he saw it with different eyes. He saw it through the lens of what Jesus had done for us. That Jesus had come to this world to give his life that we could be forgiven. And so Paul quotes it in Romans and he says this, for the gospel, in the gospel, talking about this message of Jesus, in the gospel, the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, the righteous will live by faith. Habakkuk heard this phrase, if you're righteous, you will live by faith. Paul heard it differently. And Paul said, if you live by faith, you become righteous. If you live by faith, God brings his righteousness to you. The righteous are that because of faith. See, that's what Paul was saying. The ray of hope that is in Habakkuk is that I look at that and I recognize that God should judge me, but for whatever reason, he hasn't yet. And then in the midst of time, when I myself am one of those people who is living in the bubble of God's grace, God sends his son into this world that he would die and take my sin on him, that he would be buried, leaving the sin in the grave, rising again on the third day, and offering to me life. And all I have to do is walk by faith. Here's rule number 2 when it comes to how to complain better. The easy rule is don't. But the better, more thorough rule is this. Walk by faith in God's authority, his coming judgment, and his unbelievable grace. Walk by faith in his authority, God's authority, his coming judgment, and his unbelievable grace. Every single complaint we have is settled right here. I'm going to walk by faith because God's in charge. Judgment is coming. But right now, I get to know about his grace. and I can share that grace with someone else as well. I don't know where this settles for you, where this lands for you, but we have an opportunity right now to take this deep into our hearts and make it real. Maybe today you're the person that you say, hey, for the first time in my life, I need to step out in faith and put my trust in Jesus, and I need to make that commitment to Him. If that's you today, do it. Just absolutely say, Jesus, today, this is my day. I want to give you me, and I want it to be lasting and for forever. No longer do I want to be in charge of my life. I give you me. And for some of you, you've kind of floated away, and now you need to come on back, and I say, just do it. Just say, God, I am all in. I am all yours. You deserve to judge me. I deserve to be judged, but you're showing me grace through Jesus, and I receive it. And today, as you come forward to receive communion, I encourage you to receive the grace that God is offering to you. On the night before Jesus was crucified, He took bread and He broke it and He gave it to His disciples, and He said, this is my body which is broken for you. Eat it in remembrance of me. And then after the dinner, He took the cup. For Him it was wine, for us it's grape juice. And He says, this cup is the new covenant in my blood. Drink it whenever you drink of it in remembrance of me. Today, if you can affirm that Jesus is your King, that He's on the throne, that He is in the temple, and that you're going to be silent before Him, you are welcome to join us. We're going to take a moment. It's just going to be silent for a little bit before we sing our final song. And in that silent moment, I encourage you to reflect and to ask God what this means for you. And then during our final song, come forward, take a piece of the bread, dip it in the grape juice, and you can either eat it right there, or you can take it back to your seat, or you can kneel down up here. We're going to have our prayer team up here to pray for you if you would like that. But let me pray for you now. God, we recognize that our attention in this world is placed so much on the frustrations that we have, the issues and the concerns that we have. And we identify the problems and we just highlight those problems. But today, Father, we highlight you. We highlight your grace, your sovereignty. We put our lives in your hands. And if we are with you, then it will be well with us in our souls for now and eternity. God, would you move in our lives here? And for everyone here in this room, would you confirm to them that you are God in the temple and that we can just be silent before you and let you be in charge as we simply walk by faith. We receive the grace that you have given to us, and we are grateful for it. In Jesus' name. As we close out our time today, let me invite you to sing with us, to come forward, to receive communion, to spend some time in prayer. Seek God, how He is working in your life. Grander earth has quaked before, moved by the sound of His voice. Seas that are shaken and stirred can be calmed and broken for my regard. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well.
eyes are on you, and it is well with me. Far be it from me to not believe, even when my eyes can see. And this mountain that's in front of me will be thrown into the midst of the sea. And through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well. It is well. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. So let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. Let go, my soul, and trust in Him. The waves and wind still know His name. The waves and wind still know His name. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well. It is well with my eyes are on you. Through it all, it is well. Through it all, my eyes are on you, and it is well with me. We get to be the people this week who go into a world that is facing frustration and hardship, to go into a complaining world and be those people who can say, but not us. It's well with me. It is well with my soul, because my God is on the throne, and my God is still in charge, and He has a plan, and it's good. So go into this world and be a blessing to the people you come across. Let them know how good He is and that His grace is real. God bless you as you go from this place.